Hey babes, it's Lex. Welcome back. This video is well overdue and I know that. I'm sorry. So I wanted to talk to you guys today about just what my experience has been like as a new nurse in cardiology. I know it's definitely like a scary field to start out in, and I was definitely very nervous to start in this field because of just like cardiology, like the heart. Like a lot of it, especially coming out of nursing school, like is really unknown. Even though we go over in nursing school, it's not the same as obviously like when you're, you know, out in the field, especially being a new nurse, because we don't know everything. So yeah, I just wanted to talk to you guys about this today, let you guys know what my experience is like, and hopefully ease your mind a little bit if you are going into cardiology as a brand new nurse. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I would always love to have you join my lovely team of babes, and click that notification button so you can see any new videos that come up. I'd like to first start off by talking about like my first week, my first couple of weeks, and really like my first day I did just shadowing. Like I shadowed my preceptor, and that was pretty much it. You know, I got to get the feel of the floor, where things are and things like that. And then after the first day, things started kicking up really quick, like super quick. Like I can remember my preceptor telling me like, okay, you're gonna take a patient today. I was like, are you ready for me to take a patient? Like, am I ready to take a patient? Like, on, you know what I mean? Not, and it wasn't really on my own. It was more of like, okay, you take the lead, and you know, you do all the work. And from not being in school, honestly, I graduated in May, and not, you know, I didn't start working until September. From not being in school for that long and not touching a patient and that long, I was like super nervous. I'm like, I was thinking like, are you sure I'm ready? Like I didn't want to say anything, but like I totally felt that. And that feeling is so normal. So if you feel like that, it's super normal. Don't be afraid. Like, don't be afraid to just dive right in there. So yeah, I can just remember that first like day, she's like, you're gonna take a patient, and I was just like, oh my god. It's definitely like nerve-wracking going into rooms. You don't want people to sense that you're a new nurse. You don't want them to sense that you like are still lacking quite a bit of just knowledge, especially in a specialty field like cardiology. Like, it's definitely terrifying, especially like when you have family in the room and things like that. So you don't always want to, like, I know for me, I didn't want to feel like people can sense that I'm like the new nurse. So that was definitely like very difficult for me. And then the days following, each day she would increase my workload, she would increase my patients. And I remember getting to a point where I was like, she told me, she's like, yeah, so you're gonna take the full assignment. And I was like, oh my god. Obviously, like, I didn't tell her like any of like my uncertainties, because like whatever. I just remember being like, I don't think like I can handle all of this so soon, because I thought honestly I was gonna get a little bit more time shadowing, a little bit more. Nope, they push you right in there and they're like, okay, it's time for you to shine, let's go. And it's definitely a good way to learn, because I feel like jumping right in it, you learn so much. But sometimes I do kind of wish that I had more of a like cardiology background or something like that. But honestly, everybody on my floor is like super helpful. They're like super willing to help you out in any way, answer questions. And me, like, I ask so many questions. Like sometimes I feel like I ask too much, but like I'd rather ask a question than not ask the question and be like, you know, putting somebody in harm because I didn't ask the question. Or just simple things like, you know, a lot of acronyms. They have a lot of acronyms in cardiology, and obviously like I don't know them because I just started out. So a lot of times they're like, somebody may be giving me a report, and they're like, you know, just going over, I don't know, saying this person got 1 DES to the OM and blah blah blah. And I have to stop people sometimes. I'm like, I'm sorry, but what does that mean? And it's better that you ask than to not ask. So definitely, like, don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't be afraid to like dive right in there. Because honestly, I feel like one thing I wish I did better was to be less timid. I feel like I was so timid, and like every little thing I went to do, I did it so just like, because I was just so scared, because I was like a new nurse and everything I was doing was definitely new. And as everybody says, like, nursing school doesn't really, you know, prepare you. I mean, it prepares you for the basic things, but it doesn't prepare you for the real world almost. It's like, it's not the same. So when people say like you learn all of your skills as a nurse, like, that's true. That's so true. Like, you don't just learn it in nursing school. Like, you learn everything as a nurse, like, while you're in the working field, while you're doing it. And then what also just kind of sucks is, again, because like you don't know everything, it's like you have a patient and you're able to recognize, you know, something's wrong with this patient, but you're not able to pinpoint exactly what's wrong. And sometimes you're not even able to like spit out like in actual words what's wrong, but you do realize like something's wrong with this patient and something needs to be done. In those senses, I would always like go get my preceptor, or if my preceptor wasn't available at the time for some odd reason, like I would just get the next like nurse that I felt comfortable with and be like, look, I have this patient, I have this issue, please help. And it's definitely very nerve-wracking, again, because you know, you can understand that something's wrong with this patient, but you can't quite put your finger on it. And then also it's just like, sometimes you feel silly because like you'll say to somebody, or say to your preceptor, like, or even the provider, the doctor, you'll say, okay, something's going on with this patient, and then they'll start asking questions that you're like, dang, I should know the answer to that, or I should have already thought of. Like, they'll ask, like, you know, what's their blood pressure, what's their this, what's their that, what's their lab values, and it's kind of like, I should have already looked at it, but I wasn't like, wasn't able to think enough to like know, like, okay, this is what I need to look at. I need to look at these before I go present this problem to my preceptor, to the doctor, or whoever, so that they can have all of the information, so that they can understand what I'm seeing as well. And I just like remember like that I was learning so much so quickly that I couldn't hold like information in my brain about, like, it'll be the simplest things about my patient. Like, somebody would ask me something about my patient, and honestly I couldn't remember. It's because I was learning so many other things. I was learning these meds, I was learning where this is, I was learning how it is when they go down for the certain procedure, I was learning what meds need to be held before this procedure, what needs to be done after this procedure, and they come back to my floor in my care. I was learning so much that I couldn't hold on to just simple information about my patient, like their history, or, you know, little things like that that definitely are important. But I just can remember like going to my rounds where like the nurse manager and the case manager would be there, and then you tell them about your patient. Like, I couldn't even remember simple things. Like, they would say like, why is your, because at this point I had like all 4 or 5 patients, and they're like, oh, well, why is this patient here, why did they get this test, but I had so many that I couldn't remember why that person got that test, what that lab value was for that patient, that particular patient did have a critical lab value. It was just because I was learning so much. Like, my brain was full, and little things would just leak out, and sometimes I would feel really silly not knowing the answer to that, and I would like beat myself up over it. But then I also had to realize, like, I am learning so much, like more than I could have ever learned in nursing school. I'm learning in such a short period of time. Like, it's okay to have a little bit of that brain fog and not be able to retain every single thing, because you're learning so much, and not just learning about this patient, you're learning about everything else that has to do with nursing, cardiology specialty, meds, you know. So it definitely was difficult for me in the beginning, but I do like remember getting to a point where like, oh wow, I know that, like, or like I remember that about my patient, and it just like was this turning point. I was like, I felt so good because I knew that I was progressing, because I was remembering more, and even just the little things, because again, the little things are super easy just float away from your mind when you're learning so many big topics. And I can just remember that it was like the most difficult for me. I would feel so silly and even stupid. I shouldn't say this, but I would feel stupid because like I felt like I should know more. I should remember this about my patient. But in reality, like it's so normal. Like it's normal to not know everything at the beginning about your patient because you are just taking in so much information. Another thing that I found difficult from the beginning was like talking to the providers, the doctors. Like we would reach out through like the messaging system, and I didn't want to sound like I didn't have a handle on what was going on with my patients. Or I can just remember like a doctor saying something to me, and he was like, well, you know, it was kind of, he was a smart remark. He was like, oh, well, did they do this downstairs? And I was like, honestly, I don't know. At times, like, really, I don't know. Like, I'm still new. I'm still figuring it out. Like, I'm not 100% sure. But he asked me in a way like it was a rhetorical question. Like, he knew. He said like I was already supposed to know. And I'm like, oh man, like that really like beat me up. I beat myself up a lot. Just like I would go home and I would just backtrack in my head. Like I'd drive home. Like what during my drive home, I would like backtrack in my head like, oh, why did you do that? Why didn't you know that? You know, it's just like little silly things. And I'm like, ugh. And so at one point I started just carrying a notebook of like little things like, you know, what happens when this person goes for this procedure, what meds they take or don't take or you're supposed to hold before this procedure, or what does this med do. I just kept it all in a notebook so that if I need to refer back to it on the fly, like I would just, you know, look at the notebook and be able to tell. Honestly, I do think I really want to invest in a cardiology stethoscope, because I just had the classic Littman one. It's just because like, you know, when you're hearing certain things, at least as a new nurse, like I'm not 100% sure. Like I have been able to tell like, okay, I hear a murmur, I hear crackles, I hear this. But in the beginning, like you're not 100% sure. You don't know what you're hearing. You know you're hearing something, but you don't know like what the terminology for it is. You don't know what it means. Like for us, I get a lot of cath lab patients. I get a lot of CHF patients. But definitely as time goes, you get better. You remember more. You feel better. You feel more comfortable. And I always ask people, I said, like, does this feeling of craziness, like an uncertainty, ever stop? And it's gonna be a while before that stops. I can't wait to update you guys like later on in the future to really be able to tell you guys like, you know, that it does. But they tell me that it does stop, but it takes some time because again, this is all so new. Fast forward, now I had my first 2 days off of orientation, to where I was by myself, my own patients, like I'm responsible for all of them, and I made it. I was fine. I asked questions when I needed to. My patients ended up fine, and it was okay. So like it's going to be okay. You're going to like get it. So don't be so hard on yourself, because it's definitely so easy to be super hard on yourself and super down on yourself. But you're gonna get it. Like it's gonna happen. You're gonna start to feel more comfortable, and you're gonna ask the questions that you need to ask when they need to be asked, and that's okay. Don't discount the fact that you're new and you're learning so much. Also, like for me, it was very difficult to like be able to even though I took the tele classes, EKG classes, it still is difficult for me to like notice these rhythms like all the time, like because we have the monitors on our floor, and I need to be able to see, you know, my patient is in this rhythm, they're in normal sinus, they're in whatever it is. Normal sinus is obviously easy to recognize, but the other ones that you're not so sure of, it's definitely as a new nurse very difficult to be able to spit them out right away. But it definitely does get better with time, because I feel like from the beginning, from where I started to where I am now, I'm able to recognize so much more when it comes to EKGs. Even though you're required to take the EKG class, it's so much different when you're on the floor and it's your patient. So definitely like your critical thinking gets a lot better as you get better as a nurse, and you can't expect to come off and be an amazing like nurse right away, because you still have so much learning to do. So like your critical thinking will get better, your just simple daily tasks will get easier because you're more familiar with it, and that's okay. So I just wanted to reach out to all of you guys and let you know that it is okay. Like you will be fine. It's okay to be nervous, but honestly, don't be so nervous that it hinders you from learning. Like know that you made it here for a reason and that you're capable of doing this work. It's good. Some days are going to be difficult. Your first code is going to be difficult, you know, but you're going to make it through. You've got a big support system around you. You're never alone, and you're going to be okay. So I hope this helps you guys out a little bit. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me, because I definitely know like it's a nerve-wracking thing going into cardiology as a new nurse. And it's just nerve-wracking to be a new nurse in general. So definitely feel free to reach out, ask questions, and I can't wait to give you guys more information in the future on what has helped me as a new nurse, especially in this lovely field of cardiology. So if you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe. I would always love to have you join my lovely team of babes, so that you can see more videos and just more helpful tips or anything that I have coming for you in the future.